All right. Here we are back again with the return of Judd Baroff. Welcome back, Judd. It's
Thank you.
been 11 episodes since you were on. That's the speed we podcast at. So if you
11
haven't heard,
episodes in almost as many months.
yeah. So if you haven't heard episode 193, a Baptist Catholic dialogue featuring Judd Baroff, you can go back and watch the video for that or listen to the podcast. Had a really good conversation there. So we're going to do it again. And this is spinning out from how we ended our conversation last time. And because of that conversation, I picked up this book, Transubstantiation, Theology, History, and Christian Unity by Dr. Brett Sockold. And that took me, I think, a few months to work through because I was taking a lot of notes. I ended up with 15 pages of notes or something. And so I spent 50 minutes on the previous episode trying to give a narration of that book, and really enjoyed the book. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to dive into a shallow dive of that material. But what I didn't say in at the end of that, saving it for here, was my takeaway, and I don't think it's going to be a surprise because I think I've said this before. I don't view myself, and I don't think other Baptists or people in other churches, but I think this is probably more of a Baptist thing. I don't think we should come into like a study of theology as like empty spreadsheets where we have to like figure out our preferences and like which check boxes are we going to check for each possible different theology. Like I think we are all within traditions, and so I definitely want to like be aware of the history and the boundaries of the tradition that I'm in, and not just like, well, I just feel like it's this actually, and just kind of swim outside my lane, I suppose. So the I guess boundaries for Baptist thought seem to be it was very close to Calvin's idea of the Eucharist to start, and then there's some discussion on why this shifted, but it may be just the spirit of the age of the rationalism that ccame in the early 1700s. It shifted into this the Zwingli view of it's a kind of a bear symbol. Although again, he doesn't get into Zwingli much in this book. Just and some people dispute how much Zwingli thought it was just symbolic. Leaving all that aside, Baptists today are very much, it's just a symbol. That's the going opinion, and so it was really interesting to kind of from Dr. Sockold's perspective here, like here's where Calvin was like intersecting with Aquinas, and here's where he differed. Because I guess that would be like the real presence view that's within my tradition. So what do you think? Is that yeah? Does that make sense? I guess.
I think so. I think when we talked last time, and I'm going to do it again right here, I want to make clear that neither of us, but especially not me, are theologians, and and I,
two guys.
Bishop Barron, who's a pretty famous and forward bishop of the church because he has the Word on Fire, which is an evangelical, in our sense, ministry, and he talks about how he tells stories about how he brings up in the bishops' conference how there really needs to be some control, not control exactly, but um, certification is perhaps too strong. But for books that are used in Catholic education, there's this stamp, and I've just spaced out the name of it because I'm being recorded, so of course I'm going to space out the name of it. And it says that this book has been checked over by the bishops, and it conforms with Catholic teaching. And so therefore it can be used in Catholic schools to teach theology and things like that. And he was saying podcasters, those who hold themselves out as experts at least, should go through a similar process. I not only did not go through such a process, but I'm not holding myself out to be an expert. I mean, there is no process to go through, so I couldn't have. But even so, and even less of an expert am I in sort of the various Protestant distinctions. And so it was fascinating when I was listening to your last podcast, when you were breaking down sort of the differences between Luther and Calvin and Zwingli. Am I getting that name right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
Because it's
Zwingli.
Because it sounded to me like Luther and Calvin were very close to a Catholic understanding of what the Eucharist is, and that was surprising to me. Not necessarily because I thought they were, I mean, just because I guess I didn't know anything. I don't even know what I thought. I was trying to find something, but no, I had, if someone had asked me, well, what was their view on it? And I'm like, I guess they didn't think it was the real presence, but I'm not sure. But it sounds like they basically did, even if we can, we can get eventually to transubstantiation versus consubstantiation, but fundamentally, if you would ask them, well, do you believe in the real presence? It sounds like they would have said yes, or just asked us to define our terms.
No, they both would have said yes, and I don't think I read the quote in the previous episode. I don't have it pulled up, but Luther said something like, I would rather drink blood with the Pope than drink wine with the Zwinglians, with the with the heretics, I think he called them, or the extremists. I don't remember what he calls them.
Okay,
but
he
was so he saw himself as closer to the Roman Catholic view. I mean, obviously he was a Roman Catholic until he was excommunicated.
Well, everyone was a Roman Catholic.
Well, everyone in this conversation. He doesn't. That is one interesting thing. There's no discussion at all about the East.
Yeah.
No Eastern theologians in here. So I'm sure they would tell a slightly different story. But to the degree that they come up, it is to say they never had a Luther.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to put on paper or some of the things that there doesn't have to be a Council of Trent if there's not a Martin Luther.
Exactly. Actually, in conversations with Orthodox, this comes up because they have distinctions that Catholics sort of never consider. Like there's this energy distinction that they make that essence versus energies, and it's just not something that comes up in Catholicism. And it turns out that they had someone in like the 10th or 12th century who sort of started a movement which contradicted, their understanding, the Orthodox small o, the Orthodox small and big understanding of the essence and nature of God, and so they wrote it down. And there was just, it seems, at least from my perspective, and they might tell me I'm wrong and list, dozens, so maybe I am wrong, I have no idea. But it seems from my perspective that because there wasn't there wasn't the Reformation, there wasn't a whole series of people trying to argue against what traditional Catholic understanding of these things, that a lot less has been written down in that sense. But again, there are things written down on the Orthodox side which Catholics haven't considered because we haven't had to face. So that's just a very interesting happenstance. And it's good to think about when having conversations with the Orthodox. Not that we're about to here, but
Right.
but one of the things your narration of the book really made me think was that in some ways the Orthodox were wise. I mean, again, it wasn't really they weren't really planning it, but they were wise in that there's a lot they haven't defined, and it allows it doesn't. I mean, maybe that strikes people as wrong. Well, shouldn't you be precise? But I think some
to be
yeah,
precise.
and I think sometimes there's a lot you can convey with metaphor that logic chopping doesn't assist you with.
Right. Right. Yeah, and certainly I'm, very grateful for the theologians and
Yes.
the scholars, but for like the guy in the pew, the analogy and the metaphor is going to be what's going to
Yeah.
be more important,
Yeah.
or like that's how you teach, I guess. So, you made me think of something, but now it's escaped me. You had asked me a question about to clarify something I said about what Aquinas said about do we chew Christ with our teeth?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to try and do a better job of of putting that into words?
Sure,
Or do you
and
want
then
to
maybe
explain kind of what, like, why'd that give you pause?
sure, and I'll get to that in 1 second. I just want to
Okay.
recount something from Boethius. So in a letter to Saint, he might be a saint, I don't know, but Pope John the First, he said, and I only have it down in Latin, and my Latin's not great, so I'm going to translate it as best I can on air, which which
Wow.
is going to be awkward. It's faith, as far as possible, and reason conjoined. So it's faith and reason as far as possible, but faith. And so he was sort of the founder of the Scholastic movement. The Scholastic movement, at at least until sort of the end there, when it got a little reason heavy, was very big about saying we are going to explain the mysteries as far as we can, but we will never fully explain the mysteries. And I really like that, and that's why it's in my commonplace book, and why I can pick it up in 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is really good. That does make me. So one of the questions I had reading the book was that Dr. Sokol does I think a good job of like explaining that transubstantiation is a description, or not, or maybe even, I don't even know if he says description, but it's not an explanation. It's just the term for what happens, and it's still a mystery, even with as much as you can go read reams and reams, or volumes and volumes of books about it, of course. But I wonder, how do you decide where the boundaries are, I guess, of what's mystery and what then you have to try and explain. I certainly understand something like a Berengarius or a Martin Luther comes along, and you want to so if you've got a figure that is teaching against what the church teaches, you've got to protect your people against that. So I see that. I wonder is that the only or I guess that's one of the major thoughts that you have versus because there's something like I think I threw it out in passing. No one none of the figures in this book really explain the ascension
Mm-hmm.
uh, completely. There's still a lot of mystery of what does it mean that Christ is locally present in heaven.
Yeah.
Like it's not a place in outer space,
Yeah.
but then what does that mean if we say it's not just metaphorical?
It has neither place or time, so how can he be physically present into it? Yeah, yeah, no,
Hmm.
exactly. Um,
Yeah, so that doesn't
unless
get to
there is
explain.
a place in space and time that's sort of a pre-second coming heaven, and then
Mm,
the heaven of which, as we understand it, God lives, although God existed before existence.
hmm.
And then everything falls apart because you're talking as a creature who has only known space and time, whose very
Yeah.
construction down to the atom is within a place of space and time, and you're trying to talk about the eternal, which happened, and I'll go back to Boethius. Boethius has this beautiful line, which my faint memory of it in English is going to butcher, because
Mm,
in Latin it's just beautiful. And he says it's time is not an infinite extension of present moments. It's
hmm.
the simultaneous. He doesn't say conception.
Like apprehension.
Simultaneous achievement
Mm,
of all time. Um,
yeah.
so it's sort of the metaphor I love and I fall back on all the time is if you finish a wonderful book and you sit
Mm,
back and let it all of it hit you at once,
hmm, hmm.
that you are in infinity, in eternity, not infinity, excuse me. You're in eternity
Mm,
of the book's time.
yeah. 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 I do love that passage. And that is a really good analogy. Right. So then I guess is it yeah, I mean I guess it there's not like a rule for when something's explainable.
I
Um
think you just have to explain,
you see what you
the
can do.
the humanity doesn't really live by rules, and we don't live as one corporate body. Not,
Hmm.
partially because we're not properly incorporated into Christ yet.
Mm,
An individual can only do what he can do. And so,
mm,
really, the question is, what are you going to do about it? And
mm,
then that's understand and explain as best as I possibly can.
yeah.
And that's all I can do.
Yeah.
And that's, Aquinas can do a whole lot more of that than I can, but there's still a limit to his ability. Um,
True. Right.
and so
Yeah.
he can only explain as best as he is able to. Um, that's why Christ says being a teacher, he doesn't say it quite like this. This is my paraphrase, but is, uh, one of the most soul imperiling things one can do, because
Mm,
you're always a moment away from giving your student, or from parent to child, the same thing, especially
hmm.
for we who homeschool.
Mm,
You're always just a moment away from giving your a student or giving your child a completely wrong impression about the nature of reality that will be impossible for him to kick for the rest of his life.
mm.
Um,
Wow.
it's a dangerous thing to do, and we've got
Mm,
completely off topic, but I mean it's tangentially
okay.
related.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is good.
For those at
Yeah.
home, this is how Brian's and my conversations usually go.
Yeah. You think about a
We're
lot of
trying to stick to a schedule. We are failing.
no. I'm all truth is God's truth, so all side
Exactly.
trails are in play. Yeah, that makes me think a lot about a lot of homeschooling and parenting stuff. But
Yeah.
um, yes, it is a heavy responsibility, and there is danger, but it is definitely worth it.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, what else was I gonna say? You made me think about something. Oh, yes, I think what I was thinking also with that was, yeah, pressure's off because we're just two guys. Um, and I'm glad that there are theologians like Dr. Sockold that are doing this sort of ecumenical
Hmm.
uh, uh, discussions. Um, and I think, uh, uh, like what you were saying, as far as we just do the best we can do. Each individual does the best they can do. Um, I think that is at the end of the day. I don't feel like I have to solve any of this, or certainly don't have to convince anyone else,
Yeah.
since I can't even convince myself exactly where I am on a lot of things. So I wanted to say thank you because I appreciate these conversations, and I think they are helpful for mapping out where the borders are, and uh, I think they're helpful. They're certainly fun.
Yes, they're definitely a lot of fun, and get you know even if we never convince each other,
Yeah.
that's not really the goal. The goal is to gain clarity for ourselves through the dialogue. Um,
Yeah. Yes.
so,
Yeah. I have no desire to change your mind on this one.
all right.
Okay. So the question about do our teeth chew Christ, I think was the phrase that came up.
Well, if you, I could run, and I think because we'll get there naturally, I think
Mm,
I could run through sort of why I
yeah.
think why I think everyone should believe in the real presence.
Yeah. Let's do
And
that.
then I think one of the things I bring up will naturally lead to that question. Because I'm not
Okay.
sure what Aristotle, I'm not sure what Aquinas means.
Close enough.
Yeah, I mean, um, and to the
Yeah.
degree I had a impression of what we were doing, um, my impression contradicts what I think he means. But of course, as
Okay.
I don't know,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
and I think, well, all these guys are like nuancing and like trying with language to get
Yes,
there.
exactly.
So yeah. So why don't you start, and then
All
we'll
right.
we'll we'll get there.
So, so I think the place that really hit me, where I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm convinced, is we see Christ throughout the New Testament explaining in parable, explaining in symbol.
Hmm.
I am the door, as you used from
Zwingli.
Zwingli. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Um,
A Zwingli fan, so it's okay.
well, I mean, I heard his name, 2 days ago. So,
Yeah.
um, sorry to the Protestants listening, but I'm really not versed in Protestant history.
Yeah.
So Christ continually brings up metaphor and symbol throughout in his parables and in his teachings,
Mm.
and again we see people failing to understand him. There's and I'm looking over here because I thought I had it, but it doesn't seem to exist anymore. There's a place there. Well, there was a specific place in Matthew I was going to put our attention, um, but I can't remember what it was, so it doesn't matter that much. But he will always stop and go, you know, okay, what I really mean is this, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
even you are not understanding what I mean is this. And
Yeah.
so there is simply one place, and as far as I know, only one place in the Gospels where he does not do that move.
Mm.
I mean, sometimes he just explains the parable, moves on, and no one questions him. But you know, in terms of no, people do not understand, there's only one place where he doesn't go, at least to the apostles. Here's what I mean. And
Mm.
that's in John 6, which in the Catholic Church is known as the Bread of Life Discourse. I don't know if it's known that way throughout Protestant
I've
churches.
heard that.
Okay. So it's the Bread of Life Discourse, and where John 6 is fascinating in the way it's built up, because so he feeds the people in one of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. This is where the little boy brings him the barley loaves, and he multiplies the barley loaves.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sort of like the wedding at Cana, you know, he gets the most basic ingredients. A barley loaf is like the most basic bread you could have. Water is, of
Okay.
course, the most basic drink. And he turns it into something that is heavenly. I mean, literally, of course, but also just adjectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the steward says this is the best wine, and all the people say this is the best bread they've ever tasted, things like that. Then they try to make him king, and of course he is, but they're trying to make him king the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And so he flees from them. And then the next thing it shows is he's up on the top of a mountain, and he comes down to the sea, and he makes the sea do something that we would call unnatural. He walks on water.
Mm.
He can walk on water, and so he controls the elements. And only then do we get the Bread of Life Discourse. All the people wake up, they see that he's not there, they get into boats, they cross the lake, they sit down, and then he talks about the Bread of Life Discourse, where he says, you know, the only people who can have life is to eat my flesh and drink my blood.
Yeah.
And the word he uses really is flesh. And something I skipped is before that they ask him, well, they ask him, well, basically, could you give us more bread? That was delicious. Then when he says no, they say, well, do you have the manna from heaven? Which is their way of asking, are you the Messiah? Because the Messiah is supposed to bring them the manna of heaven. And so that's when he gives them the Bread of Life Discourse. And I'll come back to this section because there's an interesting linguistic thing that happens, which gets us to the chewing on Christ's body point.
Okay.
But I just want to bring up two sources outside. So obviously we go. Oh, the whole point of that passage before I just dropped the ball. So he says you have to chew. You have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And they say, what is this? How are you going to give us your flesh, D? What are you talking about? And a lot of them go away.
Mm.
And he doesn't say, stop, guys. It's just a symbol. Come back. You know, we're talking symbolically here, people. You know, I'm not really a door. I'm not really a sheep. I'm not really a shepherd. Come on, you know how this works. He doesn't say that. He turns to his disciples and says, are you going to leave me too? And they go, well, I mean, you have the word of life. You know, where else would we go? And you can tell that they're completely befuddled too, but he doesn't explain it to them either. He just leaves it.
True.
Again, he can explain it, if not to all of his followers, and at least to his disciples, and not all of his disciples, and at least to the apostles. And he doesn't do any of those. He just leaves it. So that, to me, was pretty darn convincing, but There's a couple other things that happened. So there's a letter we have preserved from, I would say, Saint Ignatius of Antioch. So for those who don't know, he died circa 108. We're not entirely sure. He was the patriarch of Antioch, so obviously fairly high up, as these things go. He, at least by tradition, is a companion and student of Saint John the Apostle.
Right.
So the beloved disciple is his teacher, and he writes in letters right before his death, sort of to different churches in the way St. Paul did. And one of the things he says, he's talking against a heresy at the time called Docetism. I'm probably not pronouncing that right.
That's right.
But they believed that Christ didn't physically come back from the dead. They believed what the apostles saw was an apparition. And of course, to me, that seems to make mockery of the story of doubting Thomas. You know, you're not putting your fingers into the wounds of an apparition. But leaving that aside, we're not here to talk about heresies, at least not this one.
Just heresy.
And so, you know, what he says to them is, and this is a quotation, the Eucharist. Hold up. My thing is doing weird things. Can you hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay.
Actually, sounds better.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll just leave it. So one of the things they say is they abstain from the Eucharist and from prayer because they confess not the Eucharist to be the flesh of our Savior Jesus Christ, which suffered for our sins and which the Father of his goodness raised up again. So here's the question to me is, why would a group who didn't believe that Jesus has been physically raised from the dead, why would they care about the Eucharist, taking the Eucharist, if the people giving it to them were not telling them that this is the literal body and blood of Christ? If it was just a symbol, it wouldn't upset them. They would be saying, okay, it's just a symbol. I can, you know, deal symbolically with this. But instead, Saint Ignatius, and again, this is like the first, basically, generation of Christians after Christ. One of the first writings we have is saying, hey, look, this is the, you know, the body and blood. This is the real thing. And the whole area, you know, he does that, you know, he says that sort of again and again and again. It isn't just a one-off. This is just the most clear example. Likewise, I know I'm monologuing a little bit, but if you allow me to continue that.
Yeah.
So Saint Cyril of who was Bishop of Jerusalem in the first century after the Council of Nicaea, he left behind catechetical letters where he's talking about you know, the various sort of things that you need to believe and things you should be teaching the people who are coming into the church. And again, you know, this is the Bishop of Jerusalem. It's not exactly a, you know, piddling post. This is right after the Council of Nicaea, so all of Christendom is at least theoretically on the same page. And he says, and I'm going to read the first 6 sections of this letter, the very short sections. Even of itself, the teaching of the Blessed Paul is sufficient to give you a full assurance concerning those defined mysteries. For those who want to look it up, I think it's the 7th letter.
Okay.
And I can send you, Brian, all the links to this.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes then.
So full assurance concerning those defined mysteries, of which, having been deemed worthy, you have become of the same body and blood with Christ,
For you have
Mm.
just heard him say distinctly that our Lord Jesus Christ, in the night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it his disciples, saying, Take, eat, this is my body. And having taken the cup and given thanks, he said, Take, drink, this is my blood. Since then he himself declared and said of the bread, This is my body. Who shall dare to doubt any longer? And since he himself affirmed and said, This is my blood, who shall ever hesitate, saying, That is not his blood? This is section 2. He once in Cana of Galilee turned the water into wine akin to blood. And is it incredible that he should have turned wine into blood?
Mhm.
When called to a bodily marriage, he miraculously wrought that wonderful work. And on the children of the bride, chamber, he cites Matthew 9:15. Shall he not much rather be acknowledged to have bestowed the fruition of his body and blood? 3. Wherefore, with full assurance, let us partake as of the body and blood of Christ. For in the figure of bread is given to you his body, and in the figure of wine his blood, that you, by partaking of the body and blood of Christ, may be made of the same body and of the same blood with him. For thus we come to bear Christ in us, because his body and his blood are distributed through our members. Thus it is that, according to the blessed Peter, we become partakers of the divine nature. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 4.
Hmm.
4. Christ, on a certain occasion, discoursing with the Jews, said, Unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. John 6:53. They, not having heard his saying in the spiritual sense, were offended and went back, supposing that he was inviting them to eat flesh. In the Old Testament also there was showbread, but this, as it belonged to the Old Testament, has come to an end. But in the New Testament there is bread of heaven and a cup of salvation, sanctifying soul and body. For as the bread corresponds to our body, so is the word appropriate to our soul. 6, and last, thank you for your patience. Consider therefore the bread and the wine not as bare elements, for they are, according to the Lord's declaration, the body and blood of Christ. For even though sense suggests this to you, yet let faith establish you. Judge not the matter from the taste, but from faith be fully assured without misgivings that the body and blood of Christ have been vouchsafed to you.
Hmm.
So, there was something else I wanted to. Oh, then here it is. So there was an idea, and I'm getting some of this stuff, that last letter and what I'm about to say, either from Scott Hahn's The Last Supper or from Brand Petra's Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist. So there was an idea that when the new Moses would come, and I think all traditions understand Christ as the new Moses, or as a fulfillment of Moses. There would be a parousia. There would be the Messiah would take the Jews not up to Mount Horeb to have a feast as they did in Exodus, but take them up to Mount Sion so all can see God face to face.